Hi, welcome to the COVID-19 Lake Norman and North Mecklenburg briefing call. Today is Friday, April 10th. Happy Good Friday to everyone. My name is John Bradford. I am your briefing call moderator. I'm a small business owner right here in North Mecklenburg, and I'm also a former member of the North Carolina House of Representatives. The purpose of this call is to bring together healthcare experts, government officials, and business leaders to provide regular COVID-19 updates to help educate and support the North Mecklenburg region during the outbreak. I do want to just give thanks to our standard briefing panelists. Today's Good Friday, so I told them to please enjoy the day. They did not be on the call, but I just wanted to call them out. U.S. Congressman Greg Murphy, who's a medical doctor, has been very consistent joining our calls. Dr. Jack Faircloth, who's a doctor right here in Huntersville. The United States SBA North Carolina Director Thomas Stith joins our call every Wednesday. Mecklenburg County Commissioner Pat Cotham, Cornelius Mayor Woody Washam, Huntersville Mayor John Annarella, CMS Board Member Rhonda Cheek, and Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce CEO Bill Russell. We've had a variety of other guests, Senator Tillis. We have actually Congressman Dan Bishop with us today, but these folks have joined our calls almost every time, and I just wanted to thank them for their time. Today is day 25. We started with 15 days to slow the spread, then it went to 30 days. I've been keeping track of it. There's a website here, cdc.gov, great website to go to, coronavirus.gov. The real point of this is if you feel sick, stay home. And if you're older, stay home and stay away from other people. That's really the gist of what this slide says. And then you see a picture of an iceberg. And the reason is because we're hearing some good news, but there's also some other things that could be coming we don't know about. So I always think about what's under the water that's lurking. So we want to stay smart, and there could be more coming our way. So let's just keep up what we're doing to stay smart. President Trump announced social distancing through April 30th required. This graphic just shows how if one person contaminates two people, you can see how they can all contaminate a bunch of folks. But if only half of that was done, it really does help flatten the curve. So social distancing does work. The CDC does have a recommendation regarding the use of face cloth coverings. These are not the N95 masks. Those are for critical frontline healthcare workers. But if you want to wear a face cloth covering, this is the way you do it. You can go to CDC and see it. It covers your mouth, it covers your nose, and it goes around your ears. I've seen people wear it where their nose is exposed. That is not the way to wear the mask, folks. So it sounds pretty elementary, but this is how you wear a face cloth covering. And if you want to know where to order these, we have a company right here in North Carolina. They're a textiles company. They usually make thermal underwear. That's what they do. But now they're making face coverings. They're $2 a piece. You can order them in a sleeve of 12. It's called Indera Mills. They do have their website up and running, shop.inderamills.com. And Indera is I-N-D-E-R-A mills.com. And there is a phone number, 1-800-334-8605. And whether online's the easiest way, but for $2 a piece, these are great masks. They're reusable, they're washable, and we're just proud that a company here in North Carolina has stepped up doing that. And there's probably others, but this is one that I've been featuring. Apple and CDC have worked together to create a screening tool. You can use this for yourself, or you can use this for someone else. So if you have a loved one and they're feeling some symptoms, this is just a screening tool. The idea is to keep the traffic down at the local hospitals and doctors' offices. So please check out this screening tool. It's great to have. As of yesterday at 4 p.m., we're at 430,000 total cases in the U.S. with about 15,000 deaths. This is a moving number. It's already old news because this was yesterday at 4 p.m. So I'm sure the numbers are higher now, but I always like to give you that glance. Rumor control. Lots of rumors out there. So FEMA has a rumor control website. There's lots of rumors that are out there, and every day I'm seeing new rumors that they post. I always share with all of you the latest rumors. So 2 new rumors came out. One, FEMA is seizing PPE equipment when it comes to the U.S. That's not true. That's a rumor. FEMA is working with Customs Border Patrol, and they're seizing fraudulent PPE. So they're trying to keep fraudulent equipment out of our society. That's what they're doing, but they are not seizing good supplies. And then rumor, did FEMA block shipments of ventilators to my state? No, FEMA does not block shipments of ventilators to the state. In fact, FEMA works with federal agencies to make sure they distribute these supplies where they're most needed. So FEMA is not in the business of blocking anything. The message here, folks, is don't be scammed. If someone's trying to get your personal information because they say they have a check on the way, they're lying to you. The IRS and the Department of Treasury, they know your information. Do not give them your information. We are still under a state of emergency in North Carolina. Here's some helpful numbers for you. We cover this every single call. This just came out about an hour ago. We are now at 74 deaths in North Carolina. That's up from 53 deaths on Wednesday. We now have 423 currently hospitalized people in North Carolina. That's up from 385 on Wednesday. And we are now at 91 counties impacted. There's only 9 counties that don't have a reported case. Chances are they have a case. They just haven't found it to report yet. But we've seen this map go from 8 cases all the way now to 91 during the series of our calls. We are under a stay-at-home order from the governor, and there's a new executive order that came out yesterday. It's Executive Order 131, setting policies for retail stores and nursing homes. And I just want to expand on the retail. This starts Monday at 5 p.m. and it's going to limit the number of people that can go into a store. 5 people per 1,000 square feet of retail space, or 25% of the fire marshal posted occupancy limits. There's going to be 6 feet of distance areas marked for checkout lanes, and they're also requiring other cleaning measures and other things like barriers. You've seen some plexiglass up at some of the Harris Teeters and Costco's. So this really continues to tighten that around essential business retail restrictions. We need volunteers in North Carolina. If you're a clinical person, clinical support, or even non-clinical support like facility maintenance, safety, here's a website you can go register. We need workers, we need volunteers, and you can go right here to this website and register, because North Carolina does need healthcare volunteers. State unemployment, if you're an employer and you have questions, or if you're an employee who is separated or you've had your hours reduced, you can go to the Department of Business and Commerce. Their website's shown on the screen, and there's a lot of Q&A there for you. I know they're overwhelmed. I'm just going to tell you that now. They are overwhelmed. They're doing the best they can. So be patient and keep trying. Mecklenburg County data, 869 positive cases and 10 deaths. That's as of just a few minutes ago. Again, probably old data, but that's what I see on their website, so I like to report it with you. All Mecklenburg County parks are closed to vehicular traffic. Now you can walk and you can bike, but it's closed to traffic. And solid waste management, they're please asking you, do not put leaves and yard waste in your recycling containers. It's only for the standard recycling goods, because they're trying to minimize the number of interactions. And if you're filling it up with leaves, it doesn't take long to fill up a canister, and we're putting these workers in harm's way. So let's try to help these sanitation workers maintain social distancing. Do not put yard waste in containers. We have a small business stabilization package here in Mecklenburg County. It's a loan fund. $5 million has been committed, up to 50 employees. There is some fine print. It is a loan. This is not a grant. It's not forgivable. It is a loan. And applications will be available online Monday at April 13th. First come, first serve. Read the fine print. Go to Mecklenburg's website. But there is some stabilization money for small businesses. And then they have a micro business stabilization fund. And these are for up to 5 employees, so very small businesses. $1 million has been set aside. And I find this interesting. Mint Hill and City of Charlotte, those towns do not qualify, and it's because of other things that they get which make them not qualified. So unincorporated areas are eligible, other towns are eligible. So if you live outside of Mint Hill or Charlotte and you're a micro business, there's $1 million, first come, first serve, up to $10,000, and the applications will be available on Monday. Just a quick town updates. Cornelius, Davidson, and Huntersville, our parks remain open to cars and walk traffic and bike traffic. They have not closed the town parks. They're keeping a close eye on it. The heat map, now this heat map's a few days old, April the 4th, but there are, 13 to 24 cases in Cornelius and Huntersville, and 0 to 12 cases in Davidson. Now this is, again, data 6 days old, but it's the latest heat map that we have provided by the county. So I'd like to show that with you. And then lastly, Visit Lake Norman has a virtual tip jar. You can go to Visit Lake Norman and give a tip to just like you were giving a tip at a restaurant. The idea is they're going to feature a server every time you go to the website. There's going to be a new person featured. So this helps you. This can give you a way to help people who typically are in the food and a restaurant hospitality business, who typically would get tips. And this virtual tip jar, I think this is a very creative idea for Visit Lake Norman. Congratulate them for their leadership. Now, we're going to get to the main event. Even though all my other panelists are off on holiday, the coronavirus knows no holiday. And U.S. Congressman Dan Bishop, who's from North Carolina's 9th District, is here with us. And I have him on the call. He's my only panelist today by design. Congressman, it's great to see you. I'm glad you're here. We'd love to hear from you. Tell us what's going on in Washington and some things you think our folks here in Mecklenburg County need to know.
John, thank you. And, I refer to you as seatmate, right? Because we were together
we're
in the
seatmates.
North Carolina House not too very long ago. And
Right.
It's amazing how things take you into new adventures. So I've spent a heck of a 6 months in Congress, 7 months, I guess, almost. And and I thought it was extraordinary when the first 90 days brought me to a vote on articles of impeachment against the sitting president. When we've seen all the rollout of that, but of course, then that was nothing yet. Nothing. You hadn't seen anything yet once we got into what we're dealing with today. And so happy Good Friday to you too, John. And thanks for letting me join you on your program. I think I learned things in your presentation right then, and that's what exactly as I remember you when we served together. That you were resourceful and energetic, and you can collect information like mad, and that was good stuff. I thought I'd spend a couple minutes talking about legislative response in Washington, and it's an interesting. I mean, it is different, varied as my experience has been in Congress over 7 months. We're certainly in a weird kind of phase now because we're mostly at home and not regularly in Washington. There was some possibility of going back on around April 20. Haven't heard anything lately about that. But we did, of course, have the 3 pieces of landmark legislation that have been passed. The most significant one, of which many people have heard the name, the CARES Act, passed on March 27. And there were several big pieces of that. It was $2.2 trillion appropriation, about $500 billion set aside for direct payments from the Treasury to individuals and families across the country, essentially tax rebates or payments back to taxpayers. And there's always been a question of how quickly that would happen. Mostly the Internal Revenue Service is looking to use, if you've done your own tax return and you've got a bank where your refund goes, then it'll follow that path. And those payments are supposed to start happening next week. I actually heard from one taxpayer got one today. So I think that's getting ready to flow. That's one thing that you do recognize is federal government is ponderous. There are 340 million people in the country. It takes a lot to get something moving across this great big country, but it's moving really at lightning pace if you in light of what relatively speaking. And so those payments are happening. That was about $500 billion. There was about $349 billion in what I consider to be the centerpiece, really one of the centerpieces of the legislation, the Payroll or Paycheck Protection Program, they call it, Paycheck Protection Program, forgivable loans for small businesses. And that program is rolling out. It operates through, and it's a good example how we've relied so heavily on the private sector to help the response to COVID-19. If you looked at what private commercial laboratories did in sort of pulling us out of the fire on the testing regime, once the FDA kind of got out of the way, or the administration got the FDA out of the way, and these commercial labs came in and ramped up testing capacity, and it still is improving and other methods coming out. But another way in which the private sector is being looked to is this Paycheck Protection Program. Even before we passed this legislation, we passed a supplemental appropriation for loans that the SBA does directly in the cases of disasters. They call them economic injury disaster loans. But it was evident immediately that SBA, even if you ramped it up as fast as you could go, could not get that money out fast enough. But we turned then to the private banking system, and this so that again, that legislation passed on March 27. By the following, and that was a Friday. The following Friday, 1 week ago, Treasury had its regs ready, and banks and lenders could begin accepting applications for that money. That happened at a blistering pace, and so 1 week out past that point, and it's amazing how quickly it moves. But the number this morning is that SBA has issued guarantees for $125 billion in these loans. Now, I think a lot of them that were SBA has accepted them and issued the guarantee. They may not have funded yet. So bankers are still, and I was on a call with bankers yesterday. Bankers are experts at spotting risk and making sure they're aware of them. There's still some program details that they'd like Treasury to nail down a little bit more in order for them to, they're sending out bank money. initially, it's money of the bank to fund these loans, and they need to know exactly how they can resell the loans into the secondary market. That is to say, a market facility being set up by the Federal Reserve. They need to know when that's going to happen. It matters a great deal. So few things are getting nailed down there still, but these loans are beginning to fund. And I guess then the key, so even if we talk about first, taking a couple of weeks to get it out, then it may be by virtue of the speed that I suggested there, that money may be gone very quickly. And my concern has been from the beginning about that program that businesses of very modest size and that do not have necessarily sophisticated banking relationships get an opportunity for that. And I think that's a tough issue. As the thing started rolling out that quickly, the president has called for, and Leader McConnell in the Senate has proposed a clean expansion of just that program with another $250 billion. Democrats decided that they wanted to negotiate for some other things, so they've blocked that clean extension as of now, or I would have been up in Washington today voting for it in the House. Hopefully that'll get done early next week. We really don't want that program to run out. And again, as I said, we want to have businesses, all sorts of small businesses have access, not just the ones that are extremely robust and have a lot of sophistication. So those are the two pieces. So the direct payments, the big 349 for the Paycheck Protection Program. There also is, on top of that, there was a 425, actually 500 in total, $500 billion appropriation to the Federal Reserve or to the Treasury to make available to the Federal Reserve to keep liquidity in the system. A lot of big things to try to keep our markets strong. The legislation provide for forbearance on people's mortgages that are under in programs like Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, government guarantee. Well, I guess they call them quasi-government organizations that back mortgage loans. They've provided for forbearance on those mortgages for a temporary period of time, but that threatens to freeze up the mortgage market. And so part of what the Fed will do is keep that liquid with some changes to be made. But the $500 billion that's been provided there allows them to keep the markets flowing, allows the Fed, and the Fed is standing up credit facilities to loan to much bigger enterprises to keep them solvent through the immediate situation. And also 75 billion of it, I should say, is being used to backstop airlines and air cargo so that we don't, because those have been devastated. They're down to like 8% of their usual traffic. And we need to keep that functionality working. So 75 billion of that 500 billion is for airlines, air cargo, and the remaining 425 provides that basis that the Federal Reserve can use to do direct lending, keep markets liquid, and they can. What they really do is they take that and then leverage it to put about $4 trillion in the economy to keep things moving. So it's a big sweeping piece of legislation. I guess I'm leaving out, there's also it had about $250 billion to augment state unemployment systems, about another $600 billion in total to go to state, local, and tribal governments, hospitals, the CDC, public transportation systems, and on and on. So really quite a big piece of legislation. I think we need to see how that plays out and see if it's doing everything we need to do, consider other phases of legislation to keep the economy going. But the one piece that we do need to fix without delay is put another $250 billion into the Paycheck Protection Program before it expires.
So Congressman, why? I mean, it just seems if it's such a clean addition, just add another $250 billion. The program's already baked. What would be anyone's hesitancy to vote for that? I don't understand.
That's a good question, John, and one that every common sense person out there watching your show would ask. But actually, and I know that politicians cannot resist exploiting a situation to get what they want. And just like the CARES Act itself, I mean, if we look back in our current crisis, And you realize that we burned a week getting that legislation finished because Democrats proposed to force in pieces of the Green New Deal and new collective bargaining power for unions and sort of a variety of wish list items from the progressive side. And they finally sort of abandoned most of it. They did get their $25 million appropriation for the Kennedy Performing Arts Center. I mean, it's just, it's unfathomable to me. Time is not to be lost in this situation. But unfortunately, it still goes on, and it shouldn't.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I mean, this is a worldwide health pandemic, and something that, I mean, likely my grandparents didn't see. I don't know. It's a generation thing. Maybe a once in 100-year type event. And I mean, even my calls, I have Democrats and Republicans. Pat Cotham is a Democrat, but I tell everybody to leave their designations at the door before they come on these calls. I've got Alma Adams to the call, and she couldn't make it. But right now we don't need to be playing politics. So I hope just for any Democrat or Republican in Congress that's even thinking about not voting for a clean bill to expand that money, I hope they think about their districts and all the employees and the employers that would be representative of it. And obviously we know where you stand. You want to go vote for that clean bill. So it's my hope that happens. Let's talk about are you hearing anything about a national lockdown? I mean, a lot of states are on some sort of stay-at-home order already. I don't know the exact count, but there's still a handful. Are any mumblings about just making everyone do that, or is that still going to be pretty much left to the states?
John, I don't hear it. And I think the president has been stuck in his position, has stuck to his position that should be a decision made state by state by the governors and or in some cases by localities. Everybody's got a point of view on that. And I think it's important to kind of not undermine our effort. But I guess I would just give voice to what I think. I think I'm heartened that the latest information is somewhat hopeful.
Yes.
And that certain places in the United States, I think the president's right, including in North Carolina, that we've had a relatively mild situation, and it's been particularly as people have adopted social distancing practices. And ultimately you've had these lockdown orders, perhaps they've helped. The challenge, John, is that my view is that whether we'd like to or not, we cannot keep the economy locked up for long. Not just because of the harm it's doing or people need to go to the unemployment office to get money. It's not that. It's that we still need to be able to go to the grocery store and not just run out of toilet paper, or fail to have sufficient toilet paper, which has been an aggravation, but the supply lines for food need to stay strong. I've been on the phone with pork producers in the last couple of days in terms of their national perspective, and it's a frightening thing to hear. It's just not possible to lock the economy up and do it over a long period of time. So I think what it would be the enlightened approach is that governors, county commissions need to start lightening and pulling back these lockdown orders, even as we tighten up certain focal points. One thing we've had in North Carolina, which to me is inexplicable, I'm sure there's a good reason for it, is that we have senior living center after senior living center have these outbreaks there. And, I'm sure they got people going in to service the thing, and there's no perfect way to keep it out. But those are the people who are at risk. They've got to be isolated and kept in homes and away from people that are a threat. Because when it breaks out there, you're going to have a fair amount of death. And correspondingly, though, I think there are a lot of other practices we've gotten in the habit of. If people can continue to work and be fully effective from home, so be it. But and it's not just a question of designating business as essential, John, or non-essential. I was talking to a big enterprise down east. They have a large tire store chain, 790 employees. They're an essential business, and they serve first responders so fire and and police and other things, hospital fleets. But they suffered a 40% loss in revenue in March, and that was at about 10 days that were normal. And they're probably going to be down 60, 70%. they're looking at whether they can keep operations afloat, even though they're an essential business. Same thing with those pork producers that I described. They're essential, but as the economy freezes up, even businesses that are essential won't operate if we keep interdicting the economy. So I think it just, we can't turn a blind eye to the contagion, but we also have to act. Policymakers need to act with good peripheral vision. They need to look at not only the thing that's right in front of them, but what else is going to be critically impacted. So I think that's got to change. I'm going to be an advocate for that in a reasoned way, and I'm going to be pretty aggressive about it, because I think the threat is more attenuated than some of the worst predictions suggested, and I think it is not a plausible option to keep us locked up.
Yeah, I mean, in business, right, you hear a lot about consumer confidence, right? And consumer confidence, I mean, that's a serious indicator. And so to me, I think of right now citizen confidence. And I think if we can start getting I know it's not going to be normal, but start moving towards some sense of normalcy, then citizen confidence goes up. Yes, people are still going to get sick. That's going to happen. But I think that could go a long way. So I agree that at some point we need to start moving in that direction. Congressman Greg Murphy, who I know is a personal friend of yours and a medical doctor as well, he talked a little bit about that on our briefing on Wednesday, about how, he would love to see us moving towards, whether it be opening restaurants and saying, okay, let's get back to serving people, but maybe we only open restaurants at 25% capacity. So there's still some framework there, but let's start getting that direction. So it'll be real interesting. I have a request. I don't know, I have you on the call. So I have a friend in Raleigh whose son is serving at the Air Force Academy, and he's a senior. And the Air Force Academy, and I'm sure this is similar to all the academies, they sent home their freshman, sophomore, and junior classes to work, have school remote, but they kept all the seniors there at the academy. And I don't know if this is similar to the Naval Academy and et cetera, but so they've been locked down, and they're going to do early graduation because they're not going to have a graduation. They're not going to have any family out there. They're not going to be able to throw the hats. They're not going to do any of that. So I hope when you see the president, maybe you could plant the seed, and you heard it here from me, just hearing from a friend. I would love to see the president bring in all the seniors from all of our academies, military academies, when this is over, and shake each one of their hands, because that'd be the best graduation gift they would ever receive, because they're not going to have a graduation. And I think that'd be a really nice thing to do or work towards, because these young men and women, they're going right into service without the fanfare. And we have seniors in high schools across this country that are missing their proms and their soccer state championships. And it's a sad time for all those folks. And it is what it is. This is unprecedented, no doubt. But when I think of our men and women who are getting ready to go put their lives on the line in armed forces, maybe the president could do something and bring him to the White House, and that'd be one hell of a graduation for him.
John, that's an outstanding idea. The president, ever since he began his campaign, in the first few words of every speech I think I've ever heard from him, he's interested in and speaking about the men and women in the armed forces and vets. I'm going to make sure I get that idea.
Please do.
That'd be a great thing.
Yeah, I think it'd be really amazing. So, Dan, seatmate, Congressman, first, I can't thank you enough for being a good friend to me. I enjoyed serving with you in the House and love seeing you in Washington, D.C. And, for those of you that might not know, Dan is a litigator, so he's an attorney, but he's a father, a husband. He's got a son named Jack who's going to NC State. So thank you for being on the call. And thank you for what you do for North Carolina and for our country, because now you're at a level where you're taking care of all 50 states, not just North Carolina, but we're very proud to have you here from North Carolina. So thank you. If you just want to stand by, but again, thanks, Dan, for being here, okay?
Thank you, John. My best to all your family. Keep safe. And
thank you.
And thanks to all of you for watching.
You bet, absolutely. So just, I want to tell everyone happy Easter, right? It's I didn't even know Easter was this Sunday because I lost track of time. So happy Easter to all of you. Enjoy what you can. Hopefully you can still make the most of Easter Sunday. Dye some eggs, and hopefully the Easter bunny will be good to all of your children as well. Our next briefing, we're going to get back to normal schedule on Monday. We'll have our standard briefing panelists, our folks who join us. That'll be Monday, April 13th. I'll record it. And I have this email, lkntogether@gmail.com. We're stronger together. Continue to email me your questions and thoughts. I'm getting lots of them, so thank you. I want you to take care of yourself, take care of each other, stay safe and healthy, and again, happy Easter. This concludes our briefing. Thanks for listening.